Okay, so my initial reasoning for getting a Magic Trackpad in the first place was because I thought maybe it'd help me navigate around the infinite canvas in Apple's Freeform app on my Mac Studio, because otherwise the navigation in there is so clunky. It's basically unusable. I started looking into Miro as an alternative. It's great, by the way, but I didn't want to add another monthly subscription to my list. If I could make Freeform work as my go-to brainstorming and storyboarding app, that would be ideal. So I bought the Magic Trackpad and immediately tried it out to see if it would improve my Freeform experience. But here's the thing. While the trackpad did improve Freeform with pinch to zoom and 2-finger panning, little did I know that this was just the beginning. What started as a simple solution for one app's navigation turned into a revolution for my entire workflow. So I had heard about this app called BetterTouchTool, which, bonus, is actually part of my Setapp subscription. So I could have been using this all along, but for whatever reason, I thought this app was just about customizing your MacBook's touch bar or trackpad experience. So I never looked into it because I hardly ever use my MacBook, and I never owned a Magic Trackpad until now. Little did I know about the infinite possibilities of overall customization of your Mac that could be achieved with this wondrous app. This thing is so amazing. Honestly, I could make my entire YouTube channel just about using BetterTouchTool, because that's how deep this thing goes. It's one of those things you discover and you're immediately like, how did I ever live without this?
I love it, I love it, I love it!
But hey, enough about me professing my love for this app. Let's dive in here together. I want to show you some examples of how I've started using my new trackpad, both on its own with Apple's default settings, but then taking things to a whole nother level with BetterTouchTool. All right, my initial feeling about the Magic Trackpad was, damn, this thing is small.
I'm really sorry.
Well, at least smaller than I thought it'd be. But upon positioning it snugly next to my space gray wireless keyboard, I quickly realized the size is kind of perfect. I mean, really, it doesn't need to be any bigger than it is. Okay, first thing I did after syncing it with my Mac Studio, I went to System Settings and Trackpad. I didn't really tweak a whole lot here, but a few things I'd like to mention. Under Point and Click, I turned on Lookup and Data Detectors and set it to Tap with 3 fingers. I thought this is a nifty feature, how basically you can tap with 3 fingers on any word in seemingly any app, and it'll instantly bring up information about that word. Or what I do is select a phrase using my mouse as always, and then do the 3-finger tap on the trackpad to get info about that phrase. This is just way quicker than doing what I had typically done, which is to right-click and then choose Lookup. Okay, so other than the lookup thing, I turned off secondary click since I felt fine with just using the right-click on my mouse. Oh, and I turned on tap to click, as I heard that instead of having to apply pressure to click things on screen, with this setting turned on, you can basically just tap instead.
Give it a little tappy, tap, tap, tap-a-roo.
Which is way easier on your fingers. And it's basically just how you use your iPhone and iPad. Okay, moving on to more gestures. I left swipe between full screen applications on with swipe left or right with 4 fingers. Thing is, I rarely ever go into full screen mode, but there's still benefit to me leaving this on since you can jump between spaces with the 4-finger swipes left and right. I really like this notification center gesture because it really does feel like you're physically moving in the same way as what you see moving on screen. Notice how as I swipe left from the right edge with 2 fingers, it slides on my notification center, which really isn't about notifications for me, but instead I place some individual notes widgets in there. Just things that I'd rather have a bit tucked away rather than permanently on my desktop. This was my first taste of realizing that the trackpad is not just about the big space in the middle of it, but actually there's receptivity along the edges too. But more on that later. As for the rest of the items here, I turned off Mission Control and Show Desktop because I already trigger those by clicking the 2 left side buttons of my mouse. And Launchpad? I barely ever use that, but if I ever want to, there's a dedicated button on my keyboard for it. Now that I think about it, I should probably reprogram that shortcut, which is basically the F4 key, to launch my Stream Deck app. I did, however, leave on the app expose being activated by swipe down with 4 fingers. This is pretty cool since, especially with Finder and Brave, I often have a bunch of windows open within each app, and this is probably the quickest way of getting access to all windows, whether they're open or minimized in the dock. In general, I kind of wanted to turn off many of these features so it would free me up to assign various actions to all of these unassigned gestures in BetterTouchTool. One more thing I want to touch on before we delve into BetterTouchTool. Within your system settings, tap on Accessibility and then Pointer Control. Then click on Trackpad Options. From here, you can further tweak scrolling options. In theory, you could turn off scrolling altogether if you only wanted to use your mouse for scrolling, but you should know that this would also affect panning as well. So we're not just talking about scrolling up and down a web page, but going back to freeform. Notice how after toggling off Use Trackpad for Scrolling, I can no longer pan around the canvas. So for me, I'm leaving trackpad scrolling turned on. Also, I upped my scroll speed a tad above the medium speed because I found this to be more optimal for quickly panning around an infinite canvas. A lot of these options are personal preference, so really it's up to you, how you prefer navigating around. I reckon there will be specific actions that you prefer to use your mouse for, and other times when you prefer to use your trackpad, but just wanted to show you all these various options, but also convey the fact that you don't actually have to choose to use a mouse or a trackpad. But for optimal productivity, as I'm choosing to do, I'm actually going to be using both. My Logitech G Pro mouse, which I love, and I'll do a separate video about this mouse another time. Link in the description if you're looking for a great multi-button mouse for your Mac, or PC for that matter. But yeah, I'm going to continue using my mouse on the right, while also using my new Magic Trackpad on the left. Now, if you're a regular Mac user with a trackpad, what we've covered so far is fairly standard. But let's take things to a whole nother level by introducing BetterTouchTool. As I mentioned earlier, this powerful app is part of my Setapp subscription. If you're interested in trying out BetterTouchTool and a host of other stellar apps, check out the Setapp link in the description. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, now's the perfect time. In the coming weeks, I'll be reviewing many other amazing apps available through Setapp. Today, though, we're delving into BetterTouchTool and how it can revolutionize your Mac experience. While I'm planning a whole series on all that you can do with BetterTouchTool, this video will focus specifically on how to make your trackpad and BetterTouchTool the ultimate productivity power couple. Now, as great and powerful as this app is, if you're brand new to this, it can seem rather daunting. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through the interface and the process of creating custom actions. All right, first things first, let's take a look at this left-hand sidebar here. The first key thing to realize, which is totally awesome, is that you can assign custom actions to occur globally across your Mac experience, basically when you're using any app. Or you can assign custom actions to occur only within specific apps. Also notice this strip of buttons up top here. If you just want to focus on trackpad actions, click here, as I've already done. If you want to see your custom actions created for your mouse or keyboard, etc., just click on the respective icons here. Alternatively, you can use the pull-down menu up here to jump to whichever action type you want. Okay, so all that being said, now let's just click on the trackpad icon to take a look at only our custom trackpad actions. And first, I'll show you the global actions that I set up to happen across any and all apps. Since the apps I jump to most frequently are number 1, Finder, and number 2, Brave, my web browser of choice, I wanted to make a super simple way of quickly switching to Finder or Brave. So what I did was, since I'm not ever going to use my trackpad to tap anything on screen, this is a conscious decision I made to continue using my mouse to precisely click on stuff. I made it so that when I just lightly tap once on my trackpad, it'll automatically switch to Finder. Similarly, I made a second action where if I tap twice on the trackpad with one finger, it will automatically switch to my Brave browser. Pretty cool, eh? But wait, it gets even better, as you can assign multiple actions to any given trigger. So for example, with both Finder and Brave, I often have multiple windows open. some of which may be minimized in the dock. So what if I want to go beyond just merely switching to Finder or Brave by actually displaying all open windows of either app? Well, to do so, I click the plus icon here to add a second action, which of course will be performed after the first action of launching Finder. If we go over here to the right and do a quick search for Expose, then just click on Application Expose, that's it. Now we have a two-leg sequence that will be performed anytime I do a single tap on my trackpad. Now let's watch it in action. So cool, right? Now let's do the same thing for my Brave browser. Click the plus, do a search for Expose, and then add Application Expose. That's it. Now let's watch that one in action. Double tapping my trackpad with one finger now switches from whatever app I'm using over to Brave, but then also reveals all Brave browser windows, whether they're open on any of my monitors or spaces for that matter. Let's say I have this browser window open in an entirely different space. I can quickly jump to it by clicking on it from here. So cool. All right, now that we've covered a global trackpad action that happens across any app on our Mac, now let's consider some specific actions that would be tailored to just one app. Let's stick with my web browser, Brave, since this is often where I have multiple windows that are scattered all over the place. So over here in the sidebar, let's move from For All Apps to Brave Browser. As you can see, I've already created a bunch here. It may seem like a lot here to manage in your mind, like how am I going to remember all these? But thing is, the way I structured things is actually very intuitive. See, I have a 3-monitor setup. I've got an Apple Studio display as my main display, but then I have 2 vertically oriented 27-inch Dell monitors on each side. Link in the description if you want to get one of those. I highly recommend, as not only are they great quality monitors that you can easily use in vertical orientation, but also they are loaded with ports on the back, which I plug a ton of peripherals into. So I've got tons of screen real estate to work with, but it can become somewhat of a chore just to manage all of the space, like trying to position and move windows around, especially if I want to move something from my left Dell all the way across to my right Dell. But here's where my Magic Trackpad and BetterTouchTool come into play. I've created the perfect intuitive solution for window management across all 3 screens. As I alluded to earlier, the super cool thing that I discovered about the Magic Trackpad is there's so much more to tapping than just tapping. You can actually target every corner and edge of the trackpad so that something different happens when you tap in any of these places. So what I did was I set it up so that if I tap the top left corner of my trackpad, it'll instantly move and size my active browser window to fill the top half of my left Dell monitor. But let's say I wanted to fill the entire left Dell monitor, no problem. I just tap the left edge of my trackpad and voila. And of course, if I want to move and size this window to fill the bottom half of my left Dell, I simply tap the bottom left corner of my trackpad. And of course, just as easily, I can instantly move the browser window to fill the top half of my right Dell monitor with a single tap of my finger at the top right corner of my trackpad. And same as before, tapping the right edge of my trackpad fills the entire right Dell monitor, and tapping the bottom right corner of my trackpad moves and scales the window to occupy the bottom half of my right Dell monitor. Okay, so you're thinking that's great for getting a window perfectly situated on either of your side monitors, but what if you want to move a window from either side monitor to your main display? Well, check this out. This is where I introduce some swiping actions instead of single taps. If I've got a web browser window anywhere in my right side Dell monitor for me, it feels intuitive to simply swipe left with 2 fingers to move it into my main display. So that's what I set up. I made a trigger so that by swiping left, it'll move whatever active browser window is open in my right Dell into my main display. And not only that, but it'll automatically size it to fill the right half of my main display. Makes sense to me since it's coming from the right side. And likewise, I set up a similar trigger when moving a window from my left del over into my main display. I swipe right with 2 fingers, and it moves and scales the window to fill the left half of the main display. And hey, just to make use of the top edge and bottom edge, here's what I set up for those. Doesn't matter whether the active window is in my left del, my Apple Studio display, or my right del. If I do a single tap on the top middle edge of my trackpad, it'll immediately move the window into my main display and fill the entire width and height. So what about if I tap the bottom edge? Well, instead of again filling the entire screen with the window, what I did for this one was a quick sequence of centering the window, but only taking up 70% of the width and height, and then also activating Expose so that I can immediately gain access to any of my other browser windows, even if they're tucked away, minimized in the dock, or are in other spaces. Godlike. Honestly, after just a few minutes of having this level of control over all your windows and apps, you start to feel like Tom Cruise in Minority Report. And this isn't just about the fun factor or style points, but you quickly start shaving off valuable seconds and minutes and hours from your daily workflows. Okay, so now that you've seen me demo this super sweet combo of BetterTouchTool with the Magic Trackpad, let me quickly walk you through how to set up these sorts of triggers and actions. In the interest of time, I'm not going to walk you through all of them, but just going to show you one as an example. And of course, if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to comment down below and I'll try to explain further. But for the time being, here's how you set these up. Let's do the first one in the list, which immediately places any Brave browser window in the top half of my left Dell monitor. I've already created it, of course, but since I want to show you how to make one from scratch, I'll go ahead and right-click on the one I already made and choose Enable, Disable, Selected Trigger. Click the plus button here to get started. The first thing you're prompted to do is select the trigger. In this case, we want to choose 1 finger tap top left. Notice these little indicators next to all these others that say in use. This is super handy so that you don't accidentally assign an action to a trigger that you already set up to do something else earlier. Okay, so once that trigger is in place, now we want to assign the action to it. Basically, what do you want to have happen when you tap the top left corner of your trackpad with 1 finger? In our case, we want it to move and resize the window in a very specific way. So we click this plus button to add our desired action. There are tons of actions listed in these folders, and it can be a bit tricky to go scouring for exactly what you want. So I recommend just using their search bar. Let's type in resize. And the one I've been using is custom move /resize window. You could probably use these other ones as well to achieve similar results, but this one's been working well for me, so it's my go-to thus far. Notice the little yellow star next to it, indicating that I've already favorited this one. Okay, so now that that's in place, click on the button just below to configure the specifics of the move and resize. I recommend giving the action a custom name so it's clear later what it does, but you don't actually have to do this. Under Move and Resize, you can leave that as Active Window. Next, and here's a key reason why I love this BetterTouchTool app so much. It's really good with multi-monitor setups. So in my case, I want to move the active window to 1 screen left of my central screen. So change that 0 screens to 1 screen, and then choose left, and then from main display, so that the whole thing reads together as 1 screen left from my main display. And now to precisely position the window. What makes sense here for me is to change center to top left corner and center of the screen to top left corner of the screen. Be sure to hit the check boxes for both of these. Really move the Windows X to that, offset by, and really move the Windows Y to that, offset by. Leave the defaults for both of those as absolute and 0. Now to set the window's width and height. Hit the checkbox next to change window width, and then choose relative to screen, and the new width should be 100%. Now hit the checkbox next to change window height. Once again, choose relative to screen and enter 50%. Since remember, we only want this window to take up the top half of the Dell monitor, not the full height. And that's it. Just click save and we're actually done. Now let's just bring up a web browser window and testing it out. I tap the top left corner of my trackpad and voila, there you have it.
Awesome.
All right, I've shown you some tap action. I've shown you some swipe action. Let me show you a little something else that I conjured up specifically for use in Photoshop. Again, no extra keyboard shortcuts to memorize. Instead, just doing what feels intuitive. I've got this layer here and I want to rotate it clockwise. Well, do a rotate right gesture and voila. And likewise, to rotate it counterclockwise, just rotate your fingers back the other way with a rotate left gesture. Not only is this a super quick way to rotate objects in Photoshop, or any graphics app for that matter, but it actually feels quite satisfying and is frankly fun. One quick thing I want to mention here though is if you click on trackpad settings and you go over to scroll and zoom and rotate, it was a little bit stodgy, like it wouldn't register when I was rotating my finger like right and left, because you had to like really overly pronounce it to really rotate your fingers. And you know, I don't want to go through that length of effort. So what I did was come over here to the trackpad settings and under scroll and zoom and rotate, you see how here it says set needed rotation amount degree. I set it to 10. I think the default was like 40. So by lowering it to 10, it actually, when you just quickly do that little rotate gesture with your fingers, it registers it because it only kind of needs to feel like a 10-degree angle turn. Whereas before it was like 40, so you really had to rotate your fingers. So just a heads up, FYI on that. If you're trying the rotate gesture and you feel like it's not actually doing the rotate, try coming over here, reducing that rotation amount degree. It worked for me, and it should work for you too. It should make it a lot easier for the system to register your rotation gestures. And there you have it. What started as a simple solution for freeform navigation has turned into an unexpected journey of discovery.
A young woman's strange erotic journey from Milan to Minsk.
The Magic Trackpad, coupled with the power of BetterTouchTool, even in these early days, has already transformed how I interact with my Mac. Productivity boost is a staggering understatement. If you've learned something new today, hit that like button. And hey, this is just the beginning. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for upcoming deep dives into BetterTouchTool and reviews of other amazing apps in the Setapp collection. Speaking of Setapp, if you're itching to give BetterTouchTool a try, along with a treasure trove of other powerful apps, click the link in the description for a free trial. Do it now, thank me later. All right, that's all for today. Here's to boosting your productivity and leveling up your creative skills. All right, see you in the next video.
What to watch next?